All right, Mr. Chair, you are now live.
Okay. The Board of Port Wardens will come to order. I'm Gene Godley, the chair. I'm joined with Willie Sampson, the vice chair, John Butler, Scott Henderson, and Robert Shapiro. So we have a full house and a full quorum. We have also Tammy Hook, who's recording secretary, Kevin Scott, who staffs us, and I think that's it from the city. For the Port Wardens, you have before you the agenda, and I just want to say when we get to miscellany, I've got three small items we'll talk about as a board, but that won't alter the agenda. So can I have approval of the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
All in favor, aye. The
Aye.
agenda is approved. You also have the minutes before you. I've reviewed them and have no changes. Does anyone have any changes or any alterations? John?
The one line in there where it says Mr. Jabin agreed to check into whether there is an existing pier on site. I mean, we can leave it worded like that.
John, you went silent, John.
It was unclear whether that was the capital sup, the pier that the capital sup people use, or whether it was on their property. And I think it seems like Mr. Larian had a comment at the end, but we were going to get something that corrected that drawing and showed the property of that. So we have a statement in there that's approximately what we agreed to, but it's not precise.
Would you want to propose alternate language?
I'm okay with this language as long. Kevin, do you know if we're going to be getting that documentation?
Yeah, if you don't mind me interjecting at this point, I did just 5 minutes ago sent you the revised drawings. Unfortunately, got lost in the shuffle on my end. I had it way earlier and I forgot to forward it on to you. So they did submit revised drawings correcting that location of that property corner. I think they described it was over at the edge of the jetty. That is in fact where it is. So if you check your email, you have the revised drawing now. Sorry for the late submission.
I'm okay with leaving the minutes as they are.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And John, when we get to the Jabin, I'm ill-equipped technologically to open emails while I'm also supervising this. So we'll pause and for you to have time to read that email because I won't be able to. Okay, we also have 6 findings of fact from last month. In my review of them, I saw no problem. Did anyone see any problem with any of those findings of fact? If not, let's adopt them en masse. So can I have a motion that we adopt all 6 findings of fact?
I'll make that motion.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, now moving to old business. We do have the Bert Jabin application, and I'm not sure. Rod is in the waiting room, so we can let Rod and whoever's with them. If you'll admit them, if you've met Rod Jabin Sr., Roderick Jabin, and Dan Lyrian.
I believe Wyatt Larian is going to represent the consultant tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think Rod is here as well. He's gonna...
Yeah, I am. I'm here.
Okay, before we can, I want to swear all of you in before we start talking. Do all of you swear to tell the truth to the Port Wardens to the best of your ability upon penalty of perjury?
I
Yes.
do.
Thank you very much. Okay, we unfortunately, because of a snafu, I think on our end of as opposed to yours, Rod, we have something in an email I haven't had a chance to review. John, have you had a chance to look at it?
Yes, I have, and that looks straightforward. So as we kind of guessed that pier where the now I lost on my computer. Here we go. The pier where that pier in the corner was the pier where the capital sup uses, and it's not on the Jabin property. So that's what I think Dan clarified that in the meeting, but we didn't have a drawing that showed that.
Okay, let me say we will admit that drawing into the record. So that clarifies it. And now the record is closed. So do I have a motion on?
We asked for one other thing in the minutes, and that was something from the city. Kevin, do you know if the city provided that?
No objection letter?
That to date, that has not been provided. And I know it's something that the applicant's been working with the Office of Law and the city manager, but we do not have that from the city at this point.
Mr. Chairman, can I elaborate on that?
Sure. Yes.
So I worked with Ashley Leonard and drafted a letter for the mayor to sign, and Miss Leonard approved it, and it was forwarded on to the mayor to sign, which nobody had any objections, and it said it would be signed. And then just today, we heard that the mayor was on vacation and he didn't sign it before he left, and his assistant wouldn't sign it without his approval and couldn't reach him. So it unfortunately was drafted and completed and on his desk to sign, but he failed to sign it in time for this meeting tonight. But it is there. So it's unfortunate, but in talking with Dan Larian and his communications with Kevin, they suggested perhaps a tabling of our application again for another 30 days to see if we could get the mayor to sign it. But I know that.
Sorry, Rod. I move we approve the application pending signature of the letter. We don't have to wait the 30 days. We just have does that work? Gene, can we do that?
I'll second it.
But seconded. Yes, that will work. And all that means is that Kevin and the permits can't go start the 30-day count until the letter arrives. At that point, the 30 days until the permitting starts. Correct, Kevin?
Yeah, well, you all will need to adopt your written findings next month, so hopefully we would have it in time for you to adopt your findings.
Okay. Been moved and seconded, all in that we approve this pending application, pending receipt of that letter. That way we don't have to have this on the agenda and put it on the table.
So the hearing is closed. Just to clarify, the hearing will be closed and all will be left for next.
Yeah, hearing's closed,
findings.
record's closed. We will not see this again if the letter shows up on Kevin's desk. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Or approve with that condition, Rob. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to the first item of business, which is 310 3rd Street. And again, for the orchestrator of the portal, we have Robert Miller, the owner, that's probably waiting. We have Dan Larian and Daniel Larian, Chris Ledoux, I think Alderman Ross Arnett, if he's there, and I don't know if Cardi Templeton. So let's see. Dan, are you we'll wait until everyone's admitted. Oh, there's the Alderman Arnett. Okay.
Everyone should be in, Mr. Chair, just so you know.
Well, several of them have their sound off and all of them have their pictures off except for Cardi Templeton. And
I'll be presenting for the Lyrians.
oh, you are right. Okay. So we don't have to wait for Dan to show up. Okay. Well, all of you Please raise your right hand. If you're going to speak, raise your right hand so I can swear you in. Do you promise to tell the truth to the Port Wardens to the best of your ability upon penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Wyatt, if you're going to present this, why don't you tell us what you're trying to do? And let me say at the front end, the staff report will be made a part of the record. So go ahead, Wyatt.
Good evening. We propose to replace in kind a 153-foot long floating dock by 8 feet wide, 2 5.5 feet wide by 40 feet long finger piers, 4 mooring piles, 17 floating dock anchor piles. We posted the public notice signs on June the 11th, as well as the associated mailings. And in addition, we have also sent a letter similar to Rod's requesting replacing everything in kind over the lateral lines. And that's for the 310 3rd Street.
I just a question I'm having a little confusion. As I look at the application, I can locate one of the finger piers, the 5.5 times 40 finger piers.
Start video.
That's in the middle of but I can't find the second one.
The second one would be it's on the end. It's basically a straight pier with 2 identical finger piers, and one would kind of look like an L on the end of a pier.
So is the floating dock external to the second finger pier on the end of the dock?
The entire structure is floating, including the finger piers.
Okay, so at the end of the dock, I'm just confused. That there's a drawing of something that says 40 times 5.5. Is that the floating dock?
That's correct.
And
The main floating pier is 8 feet wide and 153 feet long, and then the 2 finger piers are both 40 feet by 5.5.
Oh, I see. The 2 finger piers are in the middle together. Okay. All right. Second.
Well, one is in the middle and one is on the end there.
Okay. All right. The second thing is, are there any boats tied up external to the harbor line on that floating pier?
I believe they might have a transit boat tie up there. I don't know if it's a permanent situation there.
Because there as I see the picture, it looks like that you provided, it looks like a boat, and that's over the harbor line, and that would not be permitted.
Yeah, I believe they do boat rentals and cruises there. So from being on site, a lot of times they have them tied up there while they're prepping them to go off for a cruise.
Okay. I have no further questions this time. Port Wardens, any further questions about this application?
Well, I do.
Sure. Go ahead, John.
I guess it more gets to the comments that have been raised. I know, so I don't mean to jump the gun there, but it kind of might as well kind of address it from my perspective also. So we have an application that's been shared with us for a harbor line change that has a lateral line on it that's different. That's been gone through planning and zoning, I assume, and makes a comment about conformance. And then we have an application that has a different lateral line on it between 2 properties. And I'm wondering if Kevin Scott can tell us why there's 2 different lateral lines.
Well, the harbor line amendment that you'll be looking at later, the planning and zoning looked at the proposed harbor line. We weren't asked to comment on those lateral lines. And just at a glance, I'm not sure that they are correct because, as you know, the lateral line doesn't change trajectory. Under Title 15, it goes in one direction, never moves. So the fact that it turns would indicate it's not completely accurate, but that's not the issue with that. It's a harbor line issue with that. All of the properties along this coastline have harbor line issues, in my opinion. But this application followed to the T Title 15 code language that this board has looked closely at over the last few years. And that's why we have lateral lines that go through existing marinas.
Right, appreciate it. I mean, in fact, it'd be good to draw everybody's attention to that page that shows all the lateral lines and how they go in very funky directions. But I believe Dan or whichever Larian drew those, I mean, they have been doing pretty good lateral lines these days. And that's a good example of what we need to do to fix that part of the city code.
Any other questions?
And I do just want to again point out, Gene, you know, we have the opinion from Ms. Berger regarding using the wording of replacing kind. And here we are talking about replacing kind. So
Well,
we're
Well,
outside of what's considered. She's not here today. She couldn't be here today, but we're kind of going beyond what she considers it's kind of risky territory.
Well, I will have a couple of questions. Well, we'll go ahead and have these questions now, and I'll address them to the applicant. There is no such thing as, you know, replacement in kind in the code. There is non-conforming use, and I want to be sure that the use of this replacement has not changed from one use to another. Is it going to have the same use that it has in the past?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And it has not been discontinued for a year?
No.
It's not added to or enlarged in any way?
Nope.
And it hasn't been destroyed by fire, ice, neglect, casualty, or act of God?
No.
Those basically are the four criteria that we judge whether non-conforming use is acceptable. There's nothing in the code about materials. Those are the criteria in the code. So that, to me, that takes care of the legality of the non-conforming use, whatever one may think about the policy. Any other questions, John?
Yeah,
So what I just wanted to finish. Actually, what I didn't finish my final thought on that. I'm sorry. We have the letter from Ms. Templeton that says she doesn't have a problem with their doing that change, and so it's her developable waterway that they're inside of. So actually, they could even go with a different use, and with her permission, they would be. The way I read that, they would be allowed to do that. The other thing is the way I understand. Now, maybe she's wrong, but Ms. Bergman's opinion was that if you remove the dock, you can't, you know, unless it's damaged from that list of things, you can't just remove the dock and replace it in kind, whether you use the same materials or not. You know, that's not, anyway, but we don't need to debate that here. We have the letter that gives permission. I think we're good to go with this one.
I have one question. On drawing 4, the outermost finger pier, especially if you compare it to a Google Earth image, it looks like it's exponentially wider than the actual pier heading out. Is that just a drawing issue? See how it protrudes beyond the harbor line?
No, it's definitely no further than the main straight leg of the pier. It's kind of connected right there at a 90-degree.
Doesn't
I think what people are looking at there,
dimensional line.
They're looking at the dimension lines.
Yes, I had the same concern at first, Robert.
Those are lead lines, and with the line weight of the drawing, it makes it confusing.
Okay.
But
all right.
But those are just dimensional lines.
Okay. All right. I got you. All right.
The catamaran in the photo that Gene referred to is definitely over the harbor line,
which is not permissible. That's an enforcement issue.
Right. That's the harbor master. That's not the port wardens. It's not planning and zoning.
Exactly. Any other questions from the Port Wardens before I move to the public witnesses?
Can I just clarify that we do not have that letter from the mayor yet? It was requested, and just like with the Javen application, we have not yet received it.
No, we don't need a letter from the mayor for this. We just need
We
the
have a-
adjacent property owner.
We have a
Oh, it's
request.
3rd Street, isn't it?
Oh, you were referring from the letter
Yes,
from
sorry. I was thinking
adjacent
it
property.
was, yes,
It's
sorry.
3rd Street. Yeah,
Yes,
I just
right.
want to make sure that was clear
Sorry.
that it's been requested. We don't have it at the moment.
And even at that, I'm not, we'll discuss it later. I'm not sure it's required, but let's proceed to the public witnesses. Alderman Arnett, you were kind enough to send us a letter of your concerns and a drawing of an alternate lateral line, which I must say, I don't know how that was calculated, but you can explain it for us.
Well, I will admit that that was calculated by others for me. I don't claim any expertise in that area other than I agree with Mr. Butler. Lateral lines extend out from the shore following property lines out to the harbor line. And as is drawn in this application, they do take a strange tilt to the left and they look like they get much wider than the property itself. I don't know how that happens. And the reason that I've paid any attention to this at all is because I have constituents on either side of this property who are looking for harbor line adjustments. And I think getting these harbor lines and the boundaries correct is essential. I also question having the floating dock out into beyond the harbor line, and particularly if it's going to have boats moored to it that are even outboard of that. This is a very heavily trafficked area. It is also a very heavily raced area. I race there myself, and I think that we need to be very mindful of things pushing way out into what is a very busy harbor area. And having come in under Spinnaker myself, I know things could be a little precarious. So I think that things need to be kept within the harbor line, including mooring any boats outside of the harbor line. So, and I think board members have already noted those two things. So I hope we get correct lateral lines exhibited here. I do wonder how the lateral lines will contain all of the slips that are here and keep the boats within the lateral lines. And it does seem to me it's incumbent upon the applicant to show correct lateral lines. So that's the long and the short of my statement.
Can I address the lateral line thing from Alderman Arnett?
Please, please.
Ross, you have the application, I assume, right? If
Yes,
you go to page 16 in the PDF, it's a photograph and it has a bunch of red lines on it. If you have a...
I have a photograph with the particular property in red.
Yes.
That's an aerial photograph. Yes, I have that.
And you see red lines on it. There's about 8 or 10 red lines. There's lines along the shore and lines that go out, red lines.
It's drawing
Yes.
8.
Yes,
Thank you, Gene.
I do have that.
So those lines, so the lateral line code doesn't say go straight out. It says bisect an angle that's drawn in between property corners.
It is not uncommon to have pie-shaped
And that's what
lateral lines.
the Larians have. It's because of the way the property line corners are along the waterway there. It's what causes that. And take a look, for example, at the Tecumseh lateral, is if you end up with a lateral line that converges at 25 to less than 25 feet, that's not
John,
allowed, and you have to make some modifications. And my eyeballs make that, to me, that looks like a maybe less than 25 feet. But it's not important for this application. I just want Alderman Arnett to see these issues that we have to do.
Well, if the lateral lines are correct on this page that you've pointed me to, then this floating dock will close off public access from the end of 3rd Street. And I think that violates the recently passed ordinance 0321. You cannot block off public access from the street end with a floating dock. So there would be, with these lateral lines, there would be no way for the public to get out to the harbor itself with that floating dock closing off that entrance. So I think that's clear violation of the new code. If the lateral lines came straight out and the pier was to the bridge side, then there would be opening. But this, as shown on this page, I believe violates city code.
The Sadler's Crab House was built in about 1950. And the existing pier that was there is the exact footprint of what we replaced in 1980. The one we're requesting today is the exact footprint of what we're replacing, the footprint of has been there since 1950. And in regards to the harbor line, I understand that, but the navigation channel is about 166 feet from the end of that pier. So if you're inside that navigation channel, you shouldn't even be in there. And you should be out in the center of that navigation channel with a boat. So I'm not understanding how we would impede anybody coming through there. If anybody came through there, they would hit the adjacent piers because they stick out further than we do.
So and my wife's family went to Sadler's. We know it well. But the code that was recently passed says that you have to allow access from the street end to the harbor. And this drawing that is shown here on drawing 8 shows your floating pier across the lateral lines that are coming out from 3rd Street to the harbor.
Well, there's almost 40 feet between the end of that pier and the end of the neighboring pier. Is that not enough room to egress to 3rd Street?
The lateral line from the street end is the 2 parallel red lines that are coming off of parcel 301.
Okay.
Also, out of all due respect, maybe you can explain this to me. We're confined by the code and the new ordinance, of course, the new part of the code, but that did nothing to alter or give us any additional authority over non-conforming uses. John?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true. So that's debate about that. But I just want to point out what could happen here. You know, again, if we stick with the lateral lines, then what is Ms. Temple's property, 310 or whatever it is, you can see that lateral line. If she were to, you know, make use of her buildable area and extend her, you know, finger piers out into that space, we would end up in a situation like we have in Wells Cove, where the property owner is trying to use their quote, you know, buildable area. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but basically using her buildable area would end up closing off. You know, right now, we have access so from 3rd Street, you can cut through 310's developable waterway. But that doesn't guarantee into the future that 310 won't want to go out to there. So that, and then 310 would be constrained because under the new ordinance saying, well, you can't shut off access. So this is kind of just shows how these pieces fit together in kind of a very complicated way, and especially with the lateral lines being so skewed here.
But under the code, we're confined to the authority given to us, both in terms of non-conforming uses and what the lateral lines are. I mean, I don't have to say, it's like commenting on the harbor lines. We don't make policy, we follow the law. So I mean, I wonder under what authority, well, we have to deny a non-conforming use that complies with 1518-110.
If you're asking me that question, I think the new code gives you that authority. You are now supposed to consider under the new ordinance anything that would impede, and I know the word impede had different discussion about it, but we cannot allow someone to impede with a replacement dock access from the street end to the water. And in this drawing, it is showing the dock going back in the same place, which impedes that access. And so
There's still
I
access
think
there. There's still access.
as Mr. Butler just pointed out, unless Miss Templeton extends her piers out into her full lateral lines, and then there's not.
Then that would be a question of whether we would approve that application, because that would be the one that impedes access. I mean, if you have access under the code ordinance that, code that you drafted, if you have access, we have no authority to deny it.
I think you do, but I'm not your attorney, and apparently your attorney's not here. So,
and that's true. That's true. And I'm not my attorney. Okay. Ross, do you have any of the questions of the alderman, who's very generous with his time? And if not, I'd like to move to, I guess I'll take them in order. I guess Mr. Ledoux was the next person that filed a comment as a public witness. Mr. Ledoux, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, wardens, neighbors. My name's Chris Ledoux. I am an attorney. I live at 215 Severn Avenue in Eastport. I'm literally a stone's throw from this property in the street end. In fact, I'm 155 feet from 310 3rd Street, which is significant for administrative law purposes. I'm approximately 300 feet from the waterway street end. And let me just, as a procedural matter, say that through my testimony tonight, please consider me a party to the proceedings for administrative review if this goes further beyond this this commission. I'm excited to learn that the city and the harbor master plans to install a floating dock at the end of 3rd Street. I don't know if you know this or not, but the city got some grant money from different sources. There's a list. I'm excited about the one being installed at the end of Conduit Street. And I'm excited about this one here because for years, I've given up on trying to navigate into the 3rd Street end with my runabout because it's not safe for my family or my friends to hop the seawall to get into my runabout. But nevertheless, we still use the street end for dropping our kayak and our supboards. But we also do that safely by the gracious accommodation of Spring River Kayak, which is a tenant of WP Nautical, Miss Templeton's property. They allow us as neighbors, it's a friendly neighborhood, to use their floating dock to get in there. But I was really excited that finally, we're not going to have to impose on them, although we don't take advantage of it, that we'd finally get this public access facility at the street end. And, I asked Kevin Scott about that. He wasn't aware of that. I've tried to reach out to the harbor master. I learned they weren't going to be here tonight. But I think the issue that we're talking about here is one that I have concerns with. And that said, I'm trying not to be a NIMBY here. I think there is a workable solution, if it's agreeable to folks. But absent that, I do think, I have concerns. Now, I understand that there might be some disagreement exactly where the lateral lines are. I get that it is very complicated. I think others are going to talk about that. I have no technical expertise or competence to talk about what's the right line or what isn't. All I know is this is the application and this is what's submitted. So this is what I'm basing my concerns on. And my concern is this, you know, and I think Warden Butler and Alderman Annette raised it, that if later WP Nautical installs structures up to where this, I guess it's drawing 8 with the red lines, where it shows WP Nautical's lateral line is with the city property, if they do that as a matter of right, and Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I don't know what the basis of that would be to deny that applicant, if that were to come in the future, to deny their ability to develop within their line. But nevertheless, if WP Nautical did that, and I don't know if there are plans to do that or not. I know there's some upgrading plans in the works, but again, it would be unfair to, you know, put WP Nautical on the spot today to promise some kind of, you know, thing like that. And no one can reasonably expect them to do that. And so if that were to happen, there is no navigable way for me with my runabout or my kayak or my supboard to use the public access, the public riparian rights. And I disagree with the staff report finding that says this doesn't interfere with those rights. It clearly encroaches. It's clearly, you know, why are we talking about this no objection letter? I mean, clearly, especially the floating dock right at the end between the 2 red lines is, to Alderman Annette's point, clearly blocking it. And Mr. Lyrian, with all due respect, you're right. Right now, we don't have a problem. And that's why I think there's maybe a workable solution that if this was a conditional approval that sometime in the future, this is a problem, that be removed. And I say that too, because this is floating. You know, Mr. Wyatt Lyrian said, you know, the entire structure, the finger piers and the dock are floating. And I think that's significant here. And with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, you know, you're speaking my language as a lawyer, right? Live and die by the code. I just disagree with your read of it, and let me tell you why. While you point to 1518.110 for the non-conforming, you know, conforming and non-conforming rules, that talks about only those things lawfully installed as of 1980. To learn what's lawfully installed as of 1980, you look to section 1518.120. 1518.120 tells you, the port wardens, what is or isn't lawful. And 1518.120, for lack of, you know, getting into the technical elements, is like a grandfather, only grants that to fixed or permanent structures. This is not a fixed or permanent structure. It's floating. Now, maybe the pilings need to stay there, or the pilings can be replaced, but the floating dock and the finger piers are not fixed or permanent there, so they weren't lawful under 1518.120, and therefore the conforming non-conforming is respectfully not an accurate read of the code, in my opinion. You have your attorneys, you know, you get 5 attorneys in a room, you get 5 opinions. I just want to point that out to the port wardens. The second thing, of course, you're talking about 1518.100A, which is the 5-foot setback from the lateral line. Clearly, you have to make a finding that this encroaches on the 5-foot setback. And I can't speak for the mayor, although I spoke to the mayor, and I wouldn't presume that the no objection letter is imminent. I think that there is some dialogue going to be promised to constituents on these very issues. But in the record, as we sit here tonight, there is not a no objection letter filed by the city. The other thing I want to talk about is the new law, 1516.30E. And I think the port wardens understand whether the code is written right or there's conflicting provisions, how important this issue has become to the community. So much so that we went to the council and they passed lickety-split by near unanimity. I think it might have even been unanimous, 1516.30E. And if you don't think that applies here, then we got to go back to the council, and we may be going to circuit court to resolve these conflicts in the code. Because I will tell you, Mr. Chairman, 1516.30E is a prohibition on this board's authority. What that section says is this board or this port wardens cannot approve if, and that if is here. So that's your lack of authority to prove this application based on the submission with all, and I don't mean to get fired up. This is, lawyers, I've had a tough day at work on other things, so I don't mean to do it, but I don't really think that reading of the code is accurate. I appreciate your adherence to the code, but I just don't think it's right. And I don't, I'm not saber rattling. People on the call that know me know that I'm not shy on mostly planning and zoning things of going to court. I think especially we need to know definitively if what we passed in 15, 16, 38 going to our aldermen, the public support for it, for the issues that keep coming up time and time and time again. If this isn't going to be applied, gosh darn it, we're going to do everything we can either judicially or legislatively with the council or with the mayor, because, I sit here, we've got the Maritime Task Force and other neighbors and everybody are asking Cardi and 310 and other maritime owners to let us cross their property to ding our kayaks. I don't need permission here. This is the street end, but now, and the city is actually putting in a floating dock finally. And now, depending upon what future development might come legally, I'm not going to be able to get out there. I mean, it really makes no public policy sense. Now, that said, putting aside which reading of the code is right and if this turns out, because look, a lot of the neighbors, me including, want to be supportive of our maritime businesses. And right now it works, right? Because, WP Nautical hasn't built up to their line, if these are the right lines, and there is room right now. But, in the future, the time to discuss this is now. And again, like I said, I think there's a workable solution here. Such that if this was a conditional approval where the property owner agreed that in the future this becomes a problem, they'll remove it. Now, if they're not willing to do it, if you're, proceed to approve it as submitted and if a letter comes or whatnot, I'm not going to go away, and I'm not threatening or saber rattling. I'm just trying to express how important this is. And this is the decision point now. And just because maybe a mistake was made in the past, or maybe because lines move, because I don't understand how harbor lines move or lateral lines move, or if this is even really the lines, maybe we need to take a timeout and get the experts together and figure out where the lines are. Maybe there's not a problem if we knew exactly where the lines are. But based on these lines, it just makes no public policy sense to me. And as a member of the public who uses this street end, who plans to use it, and was actually excited, finally the city, we're all residents and we live here, and we know sometimes the city's frustrating, and we all know there are things on our to-do list. Finally we're getting a floating dock, and I look at this and I go, hey, it just seems the left hand and the right hand don't seem to be communicating too well here. So to the property owner, I hope you recognize the concern. To Cardi Templeton, who's my neighbor, my friend, but even if she wasn't my friend, the property owner, I know she is very, supportive of trying to make sure things work in the equilibrium of the push-pull between residents and restaurants and residents and public water access and everything. But, like I said, recently, you can't expect her to promise never to build up to that line. And, I'm looking on the computer.
Why don't we make room to hear from her?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, with all due respect, I do wish you apply the code. I expect you to apply the code, but I do think there's a workable solution of a conditional approval that if sometime in the future the city requests them to remove the floating dock, this isn't a permanent structure, that the applicant would agree to do so. I think that's reasonable under the circumstances. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And your dog applauded 2 times, as I recall.
Gene, before we go any further,
yes,
I need to recuse myself. I hadn't really thought of the public access issue. I live 2 houses up on 3rd Street from Severn Ave. I use that same floating dock that Mr. Ledoux was referencing, and I think it'd be appropriate for me to recuse myself and sit in the waiting room until we get to the next item of business.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that renders you unable to make an impartial decision? I'm just saying you don't have to.
Yeah, I would just assume
Okay.
not get involved in this.
Okay.
You for various reasons.
Okay, you don't have to go to a waiting room. You can.
All right. I'll look for you to go move on.
Okay. Do I have any questions of Mr. Ledoux before we proceed to Ms. Templeton? If not, Ms. Templeton, thank you for waiting patiently. So we would love to hear from you as the adjacent property owner.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me a moment here. I have, along with my family, own the property at 2222 Severn. Our management company is WP Nautical, and so that's how people know us. I need to replace the dock actually right beside the one at 310 Severn, which is why I have an ordinance in to try to confirm the harbor line so I know where I'm building to. And that went into first reader at City Council last Monday. And having worked with my engineers, I believed the lateral line to be different than what I saw on the 310 3rd Street application. And I had heard from my engineers that when the lateral lines converge and they get within 25 feet, then you straighten them out. And that is why the drawing on my ordinance has a lateral line that goes out and then goes straight. And if it were correct, and if the 310 3rd Street lateral lines were incorrect, it would be really convenient for all of us because it would establish a straight out 25-foot straight out from 3rd Street public access from the harbor into the street end. However, and also everything on the 310 3rd Street application would be completely as of right because it would be very neatly inside of the lateral lines that I believed to be true until about 2 hours ago, when I heard from my my engineer that they'd made a mistake and they did the recalculations and they believe that some of the lateral line calculation on the 310 3rd Street application is also incorrect. I do hope we can all agree that once we figure out what the lateral lines really are, they should match each other, that there will not be different ones for different properties. There will be one set that will be accurate. But as of this very moment, I don't know exactly which ones are accurate. I'm eager, though, to participate in figuring it out so that I can amend my submission to the ordinance for my harbor line, which apparently has an incorrect lateral line on it. I am also wondering if there is an opportunity, and this is my lack of code knowledge, but I'm wondering if there is an opportunity for the 3 property owners, namely us and 310 3rd Street and the city, right, which has the connection down to the street end, if there's a way for us to get together and agree on what would make sense in the way of lateral lines and provide public access and give the property owners, you know, the rights that they're due under the code, and that could solve this problem. Because if the lateral lines are anything like what's on the 310 3rd Street drawing, they're a mess. And certainly they are not in concert with what has been there for a very long time. So I came thinking I had an easy solution because there had been a mistake, and it turns out there's a mistake on our end too, and I don't know what the real answer is. But I am here to say that I would like to be part of trying to work it out, including making sure we have public access to the street end.
Thank you. Would you be obviously, from what you've said, amenable to providing the port wardens as well as the applicant your engineers revised lateral lines and methodology. I agree with you. I mean, if there's some controversy in here, it would be nice if the parties themselves could look at it, and
Sure.
if they totally disagree, that's okay. I mean, that means we have to be the arbiter, but if they can reach some agreement, I think that would be helpful to all parties. So
I'd be happy to. And in fact, I was in touch with the folks from 310 3rd Street yesterday to say, hey, I hear there might be some concerns and I think you've made a mistake and you might want to check it. And unfortunately, with some emails back and forth, they said, sure, share our stuff with your guy and we'll try to get everyone together. So happy to do that. I just, somewhere in here, there is a right answer per the code. And we all ought to agree what that is, right? Because if you follow the code, there should only be one set of lines.
well, I think the port wardens obviously don't have the authority to force people to arbitration or what have you, but it's certainly helpful to us if the parties agree upon the evidence presented before us. Also, I have to say, just speak for me personally, I'm going to need some time to consult with our attorneys vis-a-vis a couple of issues in the code that Mr. Ledoux has raised. And while I'm an attorney also, I make mistakes. Or I'm willing to listen to other views. So, any of the port wardens have any questions for Ms. Templeton? And Wyatt, do you have any comment on the three public witnesses? Do you have any further comment from the applicant?
No, not at this time.
I do.
Go ahead.
So the lateral lines are a geometric calculation. It's not an arbitrary line. And what we have there is what is the code and what is the calculation. There's no debating it. We can't just negotiate with the property owner next door that we're going to shift it to accommodate them or anybody else.
Dan, I understand that. I'm not asking people to get together or draw their own lateral lines, but strangely enough, occasionally people make mistakes in geometric calculations.
We'll check that out.
And I would hope that people would be willing to discuss their methodology if there's some issue there.
Yes, sir.
So hearing no further questions, I would like to, because I need some time to look into some legal questions, and the parties can do what they want to. I urge everyone to at least discuss and be open-minded. I have to say, in regard to what several people have said, yeah, the lateral lines are a mess. The calculation is a mess. The code is a mess in regard to what is, as Dan points out, formulaic calculation of lateral lines. We have to do that. The code is also fairly direct in some of the things, such as Ross's new ordinance and the non-conforming uses. So, of which I need some consultation with our attorney, and unfortunately, Carrie cannot be here tonight. So with that, I would make a motion that we table this application until next month, pending the port wardens being able to do some legal consultation. And if the parties have anything else to tell us next week, we will leave the record open for that. So that's my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Robert Shapiro seconds. All in favor, aye. Aye. Okay, we will see everyone next month, and I appreciate everyone's cooperation and interest and participation.
Thank you, John.
I want to say that the port wardens, again, do not develop policy, whether it's public access or anything. That's other people's job that they do very well, and we just have to apply the law. So with that, thank you very much, and we will see you next month. We will now move to the next application, which is 105 Eastern Avenue.
Get out of here, girls.
I think this will be, the property owner is Seth Lerner, and the consultant, who I guess will make the presentation, I'm not sure, will be Terry McNicholas. Oh, there's Mr. McNicholas, and there's Seth Lerner. Okay, if you'll admit them into the room, I will swear them in, and we'll hear the application.
They're in, Mr. Chair.
So Terry, your mic is off, and Seth and Terry, your video, both of your videos are off, and John Butler is rejoining us. Terry,
I believe my mic is working now.
it's working now. Are you going to make do the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, will you please describe what you're doing in your application?
Yes, sir. Good evening. I'm Terry McNicholas, Permits Plus, and I'm presenting for the Chesapeake Bay Associates, AKA Horn Point Harbor Marina. We request permission to reformat 2 existing slips to make them lift slips. We're going to move 2 existing poles, add 4 new poles, which are needed in order to attach 2 20,000-pound lifts. The existing slips are in the center of the marina, at least 100 foot from either lateral line or harbor line. There is no expansion and there is no change of use. I don't know how well this will work. No, this is no good. No, that doesn't work. It's in the very center, and that is on the site plan that is distributed to you guys. I also have proof of the ad going out, the mailings with the return receipt, and copies of both the waterside sign and the roadside sign being up. So, and I can submit them. I haven't been in a hearing since before the pandemic, so I'm usually just used to submitting.
We will admit both the staff report and all of those exhibits into the record.
Okay.
Any question of the Port Wardens?
Yeah.
John?
So the staff report says the proposed project is located at the interior of the existing marina basin and does not encroach within the 5-foot ladder line setback. Yet if you go to the drawing, these ladder lines are kind of what Alderman Arnett was looking for. They come out straight in line with the property line. But if you look at Title 15, these are not, I can see clearly, are not the correct ladder lines. And I'm pretty sure the one in the southwest corner would angle out in such a way that that structure would be outside the ladder line. But of course, we can't see that for sure until somebody draws the proper lateral lines. Now this is the problem. Here it is in the middle of the marina. Seems perfectly reasonable to do this, but we have a staff report that says it's within the lateral lines, and I don't think it is. And I think we should, we should have proper lateral lines. We've discussed this over and over again. And then we have to figure out what we do with that, still accept it, because where's the property owner that's gonna have a problem with this, maybe get permission for that. Anyway, it's just more of the same over and over again.
Kevin, your own. Can you tell us how you arrived at the conclusion that this is within the lateral lines?
Just simply as John was stating, that it's in the interior of the marina and the lateral lines really don't seem to be relevant at all. So other than the academic exercise of where are the lateral lines, I didn't see the point in getting into it. They were putting boat lifts and existing slips in the middle of a marina. End of the story.
So we do not have accurately drawn lateral. We do not have lateral lines that are accurately drawn.
Well, to the point that if you take Title 15 and you bisect the angle of the shoreline, the lateral line probably goes right through this marina as well. And that's throughout the city, through the entire shoreline of how many creeks do we have in the city? So there's a major problem with the code. And, you know, fortunately, we are working on addressing it, but in the meantime, we have to follow code.
But until it is changed, as port wardens, we have no alternative but to follow the code. So John, would you like to delay this until the next meeting until we can have submitted lateral lines?
I think we've decided to try to at least get accurately, even if we end up approving this. I mean, maybe I would hope the adjacent property owner wouldn't have a problem with this. So you get a letter from the adjacent property owner and get correct lateral lines and then move on. Yeah, maybe that would be a good way to go.
Do you make that as a motion?
Let me ask Ms. McNichols, do you think the adjacent property owner would give permission? I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't.
I don't see why they wouldn't either. It is space that is encompassed within this marina's.
Right. It's only where you have a belligerent, antagonistic neighbor that we're going to run into problems with this, really. But let's get it clear, you know, by the code till the code gets fixed. Let's get the proper lateral lines and get permission from the neighbor.
Yeah, I would.
That's my motion. You asked for a motion, Gene.
I second that, because if we don't, there's an implication that we approved lateral lines that we never saw.
Okay, may I ask a question real quick then?
Sure.
So, I'm sorry, Seth Laner, I own the property. So the application as it sits right now, you're telling me that the most recent updated rule to follow is that the application must have existing lateral lines into the creek regardless of any context of construction or otherwise?
We're telling you we want those, yes.
Okay, I'm asking, are they required?
They're required to the extent that when we approve something, we try to approve it according to the code. Under this circumstance, we're not sure we would. Therefore,
okay, so obviously it's my understanding, along even with Mr. Scott's, that they're not required within the application. My further concern is once they go in the form of an application, then we're obviously making a position on where they are. And you have, as I've just listened over the last hour now, a lot of people concerned about how those lateral lines are laid and how they're formulated, et cetera. It just sounds to me like we're opening a box of a can of worms that you can't unopen. Especially within the applicant, the specifics of the application have nothing whatsoever to do with the creek.
Mr. Lerner, the first step though of doing this process is identifying your developable area. I mean, you're right, it's within the marina, so it's presumptively, but there's this non-conforming use part. So you have to figure out if it's a non-conforming use, which you can't do unless you've developed, drawn the lateral lines. And so, yes, there is an implicit requirement. It's not something that's new, really. There's an implicit requirement to do, especially when you have a new use. This is a new use. It's interior of the marina, but it's a new use. So there's an implicit requirement to have accurate lateral lines. Now we've had a lot of discussions about lateral lines, but the geometry of doing lateral lines isn't that complicated. And Mr. Larian does a really good job of it if you need any assistance. But because not everybody does a good job of it, but I'm not trying to promote a particular person, but I'm sure that Ms. McNichols, I guess you're the person doing the engineering work. I'm sure you could do Title 15 lateral lines too.
Well, I have a couple other questions for you. I mean, this site plan is basically the same site plan. This is not the first time that we've been before the Port Wardens hearing and through planning and zoning for Annapolis City. This is the same site plan with the same lateral lines that have been approved for projects in the past, but now they're.
I can address that. So Mr.
The
Biba,
harbor lines are based off of maps obtained from the city.
I can address that. Mr. Biba, who preceded Kevin Scott, acknowledged in court that what he did wasn't consistent with code. There's a court case that came, you know, it was used as evidence in a application we had within the past couple of years. And in that, buried in that, you know, court case, Mr. Biba acknowledged that what he did not follow Title 15. And so, yes, that's the way the city's been operated. We're kind of trying to, you know, that works as long as nobody ever challenges it. You know, if it never goes to the appeals court, circuit court, it's okay. And in this case, probably wouldn't, because the neighbor wouldn't object. But as port wardens, we're just trying to, you know, we've been advised by our council, we should really try to make sure what we're doing fits with city code. We've also been telling planning and zoning, and you know, over and over, we need to get this, and you heard Mr. Scott say they're working on it. We need to get this code fixed, because in areas like this, it's not workable.
Now, I totally understand that and agree about consistency throughout the whole code, as well as for all the constituents. I just don't know how changing something that has been approved in the past, that's kind of in most other municipalities grandfathered as it was accepted in the past. It's been that way for, and this, we've been in after Mr. Biba has been relinquished his position, and Mr. Scott has been in. So it's not like it was terribly historical back in antiquity, but I mean, to try to take away what's already been granted as being correct and approved in the past kind of seems like you're almost putting a hardship on the constituents.
I agree. I think we're not, I don't think we're going to be taking anything away. That's, you know, my hope. I mean, you know, because again, maybe the circuit court would have a different, even if we were trying to follow the code, then maybe the circuit court would have a different opinion, say, no, you can't follow the code. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But you know, our council has advised us to try to follow the code as it is. And I will point out, we had an applicant come before us within the past year, maybe year and a half, who was doing new construction and was constrained by a ladder line that cut across his property. So he couldn't really build what he wanted to. And he asked for permission from us to build beyond his setback. And we didn't give it to him. But it was a reasonable request because it was in front of his property, but we didn't give it to him. Here, I don't think anything's going to, I think permission should go easily. Drawing the ladder line should be easy. It should be just, you know, fine.
Does that appear to be the only thing that we're missing?
From my view, yes.
Okay.
So we've had a motion that we table this until the next meeting, pending receiving drawing of accurate lateral lines, and that motion's been second. All in favor, aye. Aye. That's unanimous. So we will see you next month, and the record will remain open for us to receive those that drawing.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience and understanding. And we're not trying to making life difficult.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gottlieb, I have a question. Something about adjacent property owner permissions. I didn't get that. Is that still part of the motion? Can you
John just
clarify?
expressed a hope that they get the permission, but let's see what John, you're not asking someone to get permission until we see the lateral lines, are you?
Well, but they might as well do it all in one step. I'm sure the lateral line is going to cut across in such a way that would be good to have permission from the
Okay,
adjacent
if you can get
property.
permission, yeah.
Permission of what? I'm sorry.
So to do the new construction within the marina, that they don't, and basically they don't object to the proposed marina change, plan.
Thank you.
And that would be the property owner to the, well, as I look at the drawing on the right, I don't know what compass coordinate it is.
So Tammy, John will review the minutes
Okay.
for accuracy.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank everyone very much. And that ends the agenda. We have that ends the public part of the agenda. We now have miscellany. To the fellow port wardens, we've had a city council referral in regard to the amendment of harbor lines at 222 Severn Avenue. I think they referred that to several committees. It is my personal opinion that we are not a body to decide policy. And so I personally have no comment on an amendment of harbor lines. That's the policy making purview of the city council. Maybe the Maritime Advisory Committee advises on that. But does anyone want to make any comment on that referral? Otherwise, I will ask Kevin to do a 2-sentence response that, our task is to apply the law and not to create it.
I would just like to second that, Gene. I agree with you that there's nowhere in Title 15 do we give, are we asked to review harbor lines. That's clearly the city council's job. And with input from, I guess they can ask us for what we think. That's
I don't object to them asking, but
yeah.
I'd
rather not say either. Especially since I'm a resident in that area, so.
Does anyone object to our, demurring on that and just telling the city council, thank you, but we aren't in the business of making law? If not, I will, Kevin, I'll draft you a 2-sentence on that. Second item is we've been asked by the city, do we want to meet in August? This committee traditionally, this board traditionally meets in August, but not December. Frankly, because our applications and for convenience of the public tends to go through the summer. So I would propose that we continue to meet in August. They've also asked if we want to continue virtual meetings in the future. And my personal view is it's actually served us pretty well. We're able to have people attend meetings that weren't in town, which I think is good for getting a quorum. And we can always, if there's something controversial that we require a lot of public input, then we can always hold a special meeting. But for the time being, I would propose that we continue to meet virtually. Does anyone have a problem with that? Okay. The other thing is there is an issue. I haven't gotten my packet yet. John didn't get his packet till after the meeting last month. And I think in the future, we're going to head, and I think that's Robert's idea or his, express this to Kevin, that we're going to go paperless and everything's going to be online. If we can do that. I don't propose we do it immediately, but I think everyone should be prepared to try to be functionally literate on computers so we can view this online. Any comment about that? I don't want to, anyone.
I didn't receive my packet again, so now 2 months in a row, I've had to go without my packet. And the way I do it, instead of printing everything off, is I review it online, and then I actually, since I have 2 laptops, I have one with the materials on it near the video. But it's easier to have the hard copy, and I could print out specific pages. I haven't done that, but I could.
Yeah, I generally review it online and then I print out the applications where I have a question and frankly, it runs my little home computer crazy. And so I still would like to work on paper. I don't have two laptops. I've got two screens, so I can, but toggling back and forth while I'm trying to concentrate on, orchestrating the meeting is just very difficult for me. So for the time being, we continue on paper. And
Can we opt out so that we're not wasting Kevin's
Sure
time
you
or
can.
the?
Sure you can. All you gotta do is tell Kevin, don't send me a packet.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know if it was a legal requirement, but yeah, don't send me
No.
a pack.
No. And the last item, which is more difficult, I think, is most of the boards, the members themselves draft the findings. And I think Carrie wanted to bring this up at our last meeting and forgot, but we've never drafted them. We've always had staff do them. She has some concern over that. Kevin has a concern over the amount of time it takes. And so we need to think about how we would draft our own findings. There's obviously a template, and then you can put the findings in. And on most applications, it's fairly routine. I drafted the, I guess I did one recent draft that Kevin was kind enough to clean up, but we can rotate it. We can ask for volunteers. We can, I've asked John several times when he had particular concerns to draft language, but we will, as a board, get to the point where we're going to have at least more input, if not draft our own findings. So, any comments? That's all I have. Anyone have anything else for the board, John?
I do. I think my term is up this month.
Now?
In June, I think. I think that's what the email said. Ross is shaking his head. When's my term up, Ross?
Your term is up when someone else is appointed to replace you.
Well, I got an email saying my term was up. Was that email wrong from the city?
It is not incorrect, but the way it's handled is until there's someone nominated to replace you, you continue in the job. And we've had some people like Will Scott who have been in the job for years. So, since we're appointed by Ward 8, you and I need to have a conversation.
I thought it was Rob Savage that asked me if I wanted to, you probably co-sponsored, but Rob Savage is the one that asked me. I remember that, but you probably co-sponsored. All right, so
Ross,
I'm going to be traveling in July and August. I was going to just tell my port wardens that, but I guess I'm still a fellow port warden, you're saying. Well, I'm going to miss probably the next meeting.
Okay, even with that, I would hope you would stay, as I mentioned in my email to you. And Ross and I have consulted, and in Ward 8, there's a special provision for port warden for life.
That's right.
Well, I've been trying. I got some people in Ward 8 that at least one that I think would be interested. So,
but John, it comes with a Timex watch.
Yeah. When does So what's the process of getting someone to replace me, Ross? We got to do that. We'll talk offline.
Hillary, if you would help me by reminding Hillary that there's a vacancy, then Hillary will talk to me and Rob or anyone else. And if you have some ideas, I would certainly appreciate it. But I agree with Gene. I don't want to see you go.
I gave Hillary 3 or 4 names. I mean,
okay, I'll send her a text.
It's just a lot of, I've got this travel I want to do with the boat. It's just, I mean, yes, I've been able to come on Zoom, but I just get, it's a lot of effort.
I like it when you come on, because then we have your boat as the background instead of your house. I think it's very charming.
Yeah.
As a Ward 8 resident, I think I can make room for your, for your selections.
All right. Well, I'm
Uh-oh.
going to miss the next meeting regardless.
Okay.
I'm going to be off sailing.
And we promise not to make you Zoom, when you're on the water.
Yeah, because it's going to
When you're
be
moving on the water.
It's not going to be a place where we're going northeast and probably not going to be able to get in. So.
Yeah. Well, if so, we can hunt you down if we need you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll see the materials. There won't be. I mean, the one thing we have is the Eastern Ave. That we asked for. That should be straightforward. Any new stuff you guys will do without me.
Yeah, John, I'll continue to send you packages just in case you decide to join.
There'll be history by the time they get to you, but they're already.
No, yeah, might as well not send me hard copy, Kevin. Because
fair enough.
They don't come
I'll
anyway.
send electronic only.
I mailed a check. Well, my realtor mailed a check for earnest money a week, and it needed to be in like right away. And a week and a half later, the title company said, here, it didn't come. Can you, I ended up FedExing it. And then a week later, finally, they received the original check, which they voided. I mean, the mail is just not reliable these days.
Yeah.
Don't send anything in the mail that's important.
I agree. Okay. Well, Port Wardens, thanks a lot. Ross, thank you for joining us and sticking with us. We appreciate that. And
Did I just say one thing, Gene,
Sure.
before you quit? I really owe you my respect and appreciation, and Kevin Scott as well. We sit at the council and make policy without thinking about how complicated and convoluted and sometimes divisive it is. And it's your judgments that we really rely on. And in fact, if you had made a judgment that the harbor lines were not that critical for the last application, I would have respected that. But I also appreciate these lateral lines and harbor lines are just a morass. And I do appreciate all the work you do to sort that out. So I want to thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for tolerating sometimes our dissent, but we always try to work collegially, and the Port Wardens have a history of doing that. So I appreciate all of my colleagues. And with that, I think everyone should have dinner. So if there's nothing else.
Have a good evening.
Anne's at the club having a beer. I got to go join her.
We're hereby adjourned. Thank you.
I'll see you in a few minutes,
Thank you.
John.
Have a good evening.
Okay, take care.